Welcome everybody to my shipment currency guide, trying to figure out what the best use of each of these 20, 13, I don't know, currencies we have are, because it gets pretty complicated. I've done these videos in the past, but I have changed my mind on enough things that are significant enough that I do want to do another one. I have some graphs for some of the more complicated pieces, and some things I haven't changed my mind on and are pretty straightforward, and I'll try to mention if I haven't changed my mind from the past as well. But I hope this helps. First, I'll cover featured shipments and weekly shipments at the same time. A lot of these are just crystal purchases, which I really am not going to do a full breakdown of. I would avoid buying things out of here with crystals most of the time, unless it's signal data, pretty much. But for the featured shipment, you want to buy these little pieces that cost credits, because they're going to turn into, most of the time, either bronzium wiring or carbonite circuit boards, which is really helpful. For the weekly shipments, I would completely avoid using ally points for anything. Instead, convert your ally points into shard shop currency. If you're hurting for omegas, this is actually a pretty good deal for the Mk2 Raid Currency, but the get 3 for ability for Omicron mats I think is highway robbery. Same thing with the Raid Mk2 currency for the Kyber Tech. I think that's horrible value. But I actually did just buy these character shards and ship shards for credits, because I am drowning in credits. I got plenty of credits, and I can at least convert this to shard shop currency that way. Otherwise, there's not too much usually that comes in the weekly shipments that is worthwhile. Next is Cantina Currency, and as an endgame player, I only buy the Cassian's U-Wing, or I try to spread it out over time, because these 5 ship shards turn to more shard shop currency than 10 normal character shards. Sometimes I'm impatient and I buy the character shards just because I don't feel like waiting to get the Cassian's U-Wing. That is the best way to convert into shard shop currency. If you're really tight on shipbuilding materials, you can buy that too, but it's kind of a bad rate. And of course, for newer game players, you want to get pretty much all these characters, and I have a pretty good order laid out in my free-to-play farming guides if you want to reference that. Next up, we have the Guild Activity Store, or the Raid Store. We have 4 different currencies in here. First, I'm going to go over the Legacy Raid Currency, or Guild Currency, and then the Mk1, and I have some graphs for the Mk2 and Mk3. So for the Legacy, I think a great use are these mod pieces. The rest of the gear in here has kind of been watered down from the Raid Currency Mk1, that you don't really need to buy much. Like, even with these Mk3 holo projectors, it's something I used to be kind of strapped on. I have 760, and I'm constantly converting it to relic materials, so that builds up. There's one piece that's going to be in this slot usually, which is the Mk6 Blast Tech weapon mods. They look like this, but it's Mk7, and that's great for carbonite, for chromium transistors. Amazing for that relic piece. But also kind of these lower tier, you kind of want to buy these for either bronzium wiring or carbonite circuit boards, but the rest of the stuff, it's not great for relic scraps, and you're going to be drowning in it anyway. For the tier 1 raid currency, I'm going to skip past all this other stuff. As an endgame player, I mainly buy the credits. I buy these every time because I can use it for mods, and I'll buy the mod upgrade pieces. The rest of it is a good value. If you are low on any of these gear pieces, buy it. However, as I scroll through here, the numbers are crazy. 1,500, 700, like, there's probably not anything under 500 in here. But if you start getting low, you just fill up here. Pretty much not a bad value to be seen relative to how much you get. I mean, some of these you don't need as much, like these Mk10 plastic weapon mods, Mk10 binoculars. The old tank raid gear isn't that great of value comparatively, but the core gear like Carbantes, maybe Mk4 back to gels, stuff like that is great value. Also amazing value are these character shards. If I could, I would clean this out every single time to buy character shards to turn into shard shop currency, but they locked it if you finish the character. If you are farming any of these characters, this is fantastic value for that, and that would be a priority, especially for newer players getting Han Solo, General Kenobi, and Darth Traya. Even though it's not as great of a conversion, they are phenomenal characters. But Mk1 Raid Currency, it's like water. It's just so prevalent. It's valuable, but it's so prevalent you don't really need to worry too much about how you're spending it. Next, we're going to break down the Mk3 Raid Currency, which is probably the most complicated one. This graph shows how many Mk3 currency pieces are needed to buy each end relic piece. So 585 for the Garda keypad, all the way down to just 100 for each Electrium transistor, or whatever you call it. How many scrap pieces of gear you need to make this piece alternatively, and then I'm using that to break down what the cost is per salvage piece. The lower the number over here, the better the buy. So the worst one to buy is the Garda keypads. I don't buy these ever, just because it's such a high cost. I do buy the impulse detectors and the Zimbittles. I don't buy these electroconductors, even though they're the cheapest. They are technically the best value for the Mark III as far as relic scrap conversion, but I don't really need them. If I did need them, I would be buying them with this currency. So if you don't have a ton of these, this is probably the best use of it for you. If you do have a ton, probably stick to these middle two. Zimbittles and impulse detectors are relatively close, except it depends what you have more of. If you have a lot more of the Gear 12 Plus pieces from the right side of the character screen, or the Gear 12 normal pieces from the left side, that's what you should probably dictate how you spend this. Not pictured here are the arrow magnifiers, which are taken away. They're not there in the normal pit rate anymore, so if you need them, you're going to have to use this currency to get them. I don't have a conversion for it because you can't scrap to get it to those. If you do need arrow magnifiers, that is probably the best use because it's exclusive. Nowhere else you can get it without crystals. The last raid currency we're going to talk about is the Mark II, and it's a lot simpler because the conversion's easy. It's not relic to scrap to currency. It's just relic or scrap piece to currency. The lower the number on this right side, the better the deal is. This means you have to spend 95 Mark II currency to get one of these mid packs or Gear 12 support piece. Those are the ones, the purple ones you need 40 of. There's a lot of different variety, but this is probably the one people are most familiar with. And then the price is also really high for the Mark 12 standard pieces, the ones you require 30. It's like these knives, the chest plate. There's, I don't know, they're just weird shaped things. But the best deal is the Gear 12 Plus pieces, and it's kind of curious because every other currency, it's the exact opposite. These Gear 12 support Gear 12 primary pieces are cheaper, but with Mark II Raid Currency, it's the Gear 12 Plus. And the cheapest is the support piece. This is the one where you're going to need 40 per full piece, as opposed to the primary, you need 50. These two go together. This Mark 12 furnaces, I think it's the most commonly used Gear 12 Plus piece, and then the stun cuffs correspond with it, so you need 40 per each one and then 50 of this. But if you have plenty of these, I'd suggest moving on to these. I have been buying some of these Gear 12 lately just because I'm getting lower on them. The old raid system gave me a ton of Gear 12 pieces, but now that's starting to finally wear off, and I have a big stockpile of the Gear 12 Plus, so I need the Gear 12. So none of them are like awful, but it's just Gear 12 Plus, and that particularly the support pieces, best way to go. Now that I've talked about the best value, I wanted to pop back in the raid store to go over the absolute worst value. Zetas, I think that's a terrible value. $11.75 for just one piece. That is extortion. I would never do that. As I said, air magnifiers are fine, but once we start getting to below electrum conductors, these are no-nos. Do not ever buy these. Even Erodium heatsinks, so much easier to get. This is Mark II currency now, but they're so much easier to get through buying hollow projectors with Mark I currency. And then the conversion rate for bronzium wiring and chromium transistors is just insulting. It's a slap in the face. I don't know why they're here. People are falling into the trap. Like, inevitably, someone's gonna buy these because they're like, oh, I don't have much bronzium wiring, but 3 for $13.50, 2 for $900. Like, you know how many crap salvage that is? That's barely anything. So those are horrible. Another thing that's bad, I said that most everything is good with the Tier 1 raid currency. There's like training droids or fleet droids that aren't good. Otherwise, everything else is pretty good. There are some exclusive characters in here that I didn't talk about, like General Skywalker, Malak, Wampa. Those are great uses of the currency if you don't have those characters yet. Otherwise, I just stick to the Gear 12 Plus pieces with Mark II. Moving on to simpler stores, we got the Squad Arena store. For newer players, refer to my free-to-play farming guide for the order you want to farm these character shipments, but you should get all the character shipments. For late game players, you should be hitting up the prestige once in a while. Try to get over 2,000 prestige just to be prepared for the next capital ship launch. Some people buy credits. I think that's pretty expensive for the credits. I would rather just get charge up currency. That's my primary use. I need a ton of charge up currency now, so I buy all this and use it for that. There's also some gear pieces on the bottom that are solid for bronzium wiring or carbonate circuit boards. So you can buy these if you're not really strapped for charge up currency. But if you're not strapped for charge up currency, I'd recommend you reevaluate how you spend there because you should be spending a lot. Galactic War Store is super simple. Get the characters you don't have that you need. And then once you're done, always spend it on ships for charge up currency because 4 ship blueprints is better than 10 character shards. So every time you sim your Galactic War, just buy a few of these and then you're good to go with charge up currency. And now to the mod shipments. I'm going to talk a little bit longer about this than I have before because I've got requests asking to go over how I go through the mod store to evaluate what mods are worth it. First of all, ship currency, ship credits, whatever you want to call them, is more valuable than normal credits. They're harder to come by. They come in smaller numbers. You see, I only have 17 million compared to 165 million. So I am less inclined to buy something if it costs fleet credits. For example, this one. This does have speed as a secondary, but it costs fleet credits. And we got to evaluate every part of the mod. We don't care about the primary for this because it's a diamond. It's always going to be defense, so that's one point we don't have to evaluate. But it is a crit chance mod. So what do I want along with crit chance besides speed? I want offense. I want either like offense percentage, crit chance itself, things like that. The two I see, protection and defense. I do kind of like flat protection sometimes, but not on this type of mod, so I'm going to pass on that. Also, I have learned to pretty much ignore the mods that don't have speed on the secondary. I will buy a arrow that has speed primary if it is normal credits. Even if it's like this gray one, because I don't farm mods the old way anymore as much, so it's easier to do it like that. This has speed in the secondary, but it's an arrow. Like arrows, I pretty much most of the time want speed primary. However, if this was like a defense set and a protection primary, I could find use for that, and the fact that it has speed would be kind of icing on the cake. However, for that, I would be looking for a lot more synergy on these secondaries to line up exactly what it is. This one is a crit chance arrow, so I would only consider buying this if the primary... I would only consider this as a non-speed primary. If it was offense, it had speed, and then it had like extra offense or crit chance, because I don't usually use non-speed arrows. So that's one way to evaluate, and I'm going to refresh to see what else we can get. There we go. I spent 15 of my precious crystals to refresh and go over some different examples with you. And right at the gate, I see a great one. This is a crit chance set mod with a plus and an offense primary. This is one of the offense primaries are so valuable. Crit chance sets are going to be pretty flexible with an offense build. Like if you use offense set or crit damage set. And offense primaries are pretty hard to find on the cross because there's so many different options. And this one is great too because it has speed secondary, flat offense secondary. Remember, I can't get offense percentage secondary because that is the primary. And I also have crit chance. I don't care about the tenacity, but I'm just going to buy it. It's normal credits. I would even buy that for fleet credits. Now let's look at this one. We got speed as a secondary, but it's an offense set. I like that it's health. I'm not going to be too critical on the circles because you can only get health or protection. But since it's an offense set at this point in my mod life, I have plenty that have like some speed, but this one doesn't have the offense percentage. I really want offense percentage on my offense set mods, so I'm going to skip that. These I'm going to dismiss out of hand because I don't see any speed. This one, protection primary, health set. Health set's one of the most flexible. You can throw it as a secondary set on pretty much anything. I don't care too much about these secondaries, but it only costs normal credits. It doesn't cost fleet credits, so that's cheaper to me. And I love protection primaries because you get close to the maximum value out of them at just 5 dots. So I'm going to go ahead and buy that. Again, I'm going to dismiss these out of hand. This is an offense set, or offense primary crit chance set, so that could actually turn out being good if these are revealed, but it's not certain, so I'm just going to skip that. The same way with this. Offense percentage is a nice secondary, but it's green and the rest are dicey, so I'm not going to bother using my credits there. Up here, potency mod. Good secondary, health percentage, and speed, but it's fleet credits, so for me to buy it, I'd want to see potency there too, because for a potency set, we want to look at the actual synergy, and if I'm using a potency set, I want a lot of potency, so I don't have potency there, not going to buy it. Here, don't care about the primary, it's always the same. Health set, very flexible, got speed, nice, flat protection. If this was fleet credits, I probably wouldn't buy it, but I'll just go ahead since it's normal credits. I dismiss that. Then here we got the same problem as before. It's an offense set, but I don't see offense percentage. And even though I say speed, it's fleet credits. I'm not going to buy it. Here, if this was a defense or health, because it has protection, I might buy it. But crit damage, I'm not really going to combine with protection. So that's it for now. I think you can get a good idea of how I actually evaluate this store. I do it a lot quicker than that. I just do it at a glance and just kind of buy it, but I hope this helps you evaluate when you're going through it yourself. So now we got Fleeta Store. For me, I only buy one thing. I buy the Zeta materials. For early game players, I would say buy the valuable characters that you need. I wouldn't say go to Zetas immediately. Get Darth Vader, get Grievous, get Razor Crest. Those are top priorities. But just round out your fleets. This is a great place to get the ship currency, the ship blueprints, also characters too. Like, it's just gonna be pretty fast for you. And ultimately, one Zeta mat isn't that impactful. It's gonna take you close to a month to get a whole Zeta ability anyway. So I think the character shards are much more valuable in the early game. I don't like Omegas. That's a terrible buy. 1,500 for one compared to 2,000 for Zeta. Zetas are so much harder to come by, so don't do that. But as endgame, just Zetas. Guild Event Store. This is one of those stores I want to correct something I previously said. In one of my last videos, I dissuaded people from buying the micro attenuators. I would like to walk back on that. These are amazing. Always buy these. For some reason, I do think Chirotechs are the best, so I think you should prioritize getting your Chirotechs. If you can, get the computer one that's not this, because I like farming this on Lightside 7B because it's a great Bronzium node, Bronzium wiring node as well. So you farm these and then you buy the computers in these shipments. The rest of the get 3, I don't think it's really worth it. I mean, if you're short on Maul, like any of these characters up here, yeah, you might want to get them, but hopefully you are not. Probably not the relic salvage or the relic fully crafted relic pieces. That's just my opinion. As far as the get 2, best use again is Chirotechs. So you could pretty much exclusively get Chirotechs and you're fine. Like, Chirotechs are needed so often that you're going to be just fine if that's all you do. However, these Mark 12 pieces aren't a terrible value. So if you're really strapped for them, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. Imperial Probe Droid and Rolo are decent if you're a newer player and you need them. That's a great way to speed it up, and one of only 2 ways to get them, I think. The characters with the get 1, very important, especially Wampa and Hermit Yoda to unlock Jedi Knight Luke kind of early. And then the get 1 for scrap pieces, I think the best value is these secondary Mark 12 pieces, like the mid-pack salvage. And I always need more of these mid-packs, so I'm just going to buy that. The Mark 8 security scanner is pretty tight as well. So everything's just fine there. I wouldn't buy non-Year 12 plus pieces with Get 1. Just ignore all this down here. And ignore the character shards as well. Like, there's too much good stuff you can get with the Get 1 without going to those character shards. Grand Arena Store. This is something I'm mostly the same on, but I have changed my opinion on one thing. I still think that Chirotechs are the absolute best use, so you should buy those up when you get your Grand Arena currency payout at the end of the season. But there's one other good use. They're not in my shipments right now, so I wanted to pull it up here. These slicing mats to get to a 6-dot mod are imbalanced most of the time. You need more of these blue pieces to slice up, like from 6A, B, or E to D, C, B, A, stuff like that. So they get imbalanced because you farm them at the same rate on the same node. So I always have way more of this piece than this, but I have heard that some people have it the other way around. I would use that Grand Arena currency, and I have been, to fix that balance. When I see these, I will buy them. I don't really buy the yellow pieces with that Grand Arena currency anymore, just because I need way more of these, and it's fun to farm that node. But even out this balance, that's going to be great for you. And these other mod slicing materials aren't bad value. I just personally choose not to do them. But if you're buying those, no sweat, like it's fine. I wouldn't buy these other normal gear pieces though, because they are too expensive for how common they are. And next is Shard Shop, which is probably the most important currency in the game out of all these currencies. Well, it's hard to say, but to me it feels very valuable. What I would ignore are these Gear 12 Plus pieces, and also the Core Gear as it's called, because this has been very diluted. We don't want to buy this anymore. But the Gear 12 Plus, that costs $720 for 4. I don't need to do a fancy conversion chart to show that it's exactly double the price per shard, or per salvage piece, as these Gear 12 and then the support pieces. Absolute best thing, these med packs and the scanners, whatever you want to call them. These, like, always be buying stuff like this because you're gonna run out, you're gonna get low. These pulse modulators aren't bad, but I don't ever really use them because I don't know, I'm slicing a lot of materials now because of the Java event. I have kind of an influx of those constantly. The rest of this gear down here, I would not buy. Even if you're a newer player, I wouldn't buy pretty much any of it. Use your Mk2 Raid Currency. If you're really strapped, you can buy stuff like Carbantes and stun cuffs. But for a lot of players that have been playing a decent amount of time, you're flooded with this stuff. So really just focus on this little segment right here in the Shard Shop. I'm going to skip over the Conquest shipment for now because the Datacron Store is kind of an extension of the Shard Shop store now. I would always, if you are a player that engages with Datacrons a lot, this is fantastic value. You should be buying data cash to your heart's content as long as you have the Shard Shop currency to buy it. However, buying the actual Datacrons themselves, even if it's the beginning of a new set and your old set's about to dust and you haven't been able to use your Shard Shop currency or your data cash, these are not worth it ever anymore because you just farm them in Conquest. It's Mark 1, it's like the Sector 1 node, it doesn't take long to get there. This is going to be so much more data cash, which is such a great value, and you only need like 30 of these over time. Now you might scrap some, but you only need 30 across 2 whole seasons, so those are terrible value. Also the Mark 1 piece, terrible value for the Shard Shop currency. I would only buy, this data cash is terrible value now with that much ally points. Nothing with ally points, never buy any of this with ally points. Also, never buy this Mark 3 with Shard Shop currency, that's way too much Shard Shop currency. However, another good use are the reroll mats, Mark 1 and Mark 2. I'm getting kind of low on Shard Shop currency, but these are fantastic, great value there. The old set, if you're really desperate for something you could buy, but pretty much it's all not worth it. I don't think anything is worth it here. With crystals, never buy, never buy, never buy. Yep, pretty much never buy anything else that's for the crystals. Pretty much just want to buy the Shard Shop currency purchases for data cash and reroll mats. Now Conquest Currency. I actually never buy anything from this store. If you really need a specific consumable to get past the boss, fair enough. But generally hope you don't need to do that. Would not buy this gear ever. If you are actively farming one of the Conquest characters in these slots, it's actually pretty good value. Even if it's crystals, that's going to be proving grounds, pretty sure. But for the most part, the Conquest Currency, you want, if you're an endgame player, you want to be using it only on, or primarily on the new character, getting his shards, unless you buy the Conquest Pass. But there are great purchases with this in the Wandering Scavengers. So you don't need to go to the Shipments tab, but you need to go here. I wait until I've bought all these shards of the new characters, so Dark Trooper Moff Gideon right now. And then once I've bought all of them at the end of Conquest, I try to buy as many signal data as I possibly can. Mostly it's just these dark blue, because I don't have a ton of this currency. But this is the best value in the game. Like, signal data is one of the only things I actually spend crystals straight up on, because I am so short on them. The relic pieces, it's not like terrible, but there's way more ways to get those, and not that many ways to get signal data. So always get the signal data with this currency. So that is it on the currencies for now. We did get a leak on that Galactic Legend currency or whatever at the end, but who knows if we'll actually even get that. If we do, I'll revisit this in a few months. But I hope you learned something here. I hope I didn't get anything wrong like I did last time. Last time, I really regretted not recommending the micro attenuators. Such a great value. Anyway, don't forget to share your thoughts. Don't forget to like down below. And if you haven't already, please please consider subscribing. Thanks, everyone. See ya.